All right, folks, and welcome in. I'm Jake Ellenbogen, and you are watching this on Bleacher Report. And as always, special shout out to Bleacher Report for having me every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Rams time. Speaking of the Rams, we got some stuff to talk about. This is going to be a transformative off season. What does that mean? Who is a part of it? We'll get into that. Matthew Stafford, there's a lot of things that have to go down, a lot of things that have to be figured out before he can be back with the Rams. Cooper Kupp, he's already come out and basically let everyone know that the Rams intend to trade him. Ian Rappaport says even trading him immediately. We'll be talking about Nate Scheelhaase, who is the pass game specialist for the Rams. And, potentially he turned down the Jacksonville Jaguars offensive coordinator job. And then Australia, 2026. So the Rams coming to Australia. For the Australian Rams fans, love that for you guys. I have some complaints about that. I think it's during an NFL season where every game matters, to force a team to play in Australia and lose a home game. It feels a little unfair. But anyway, we'll get started. Matthew Stafford. All right. So there are a lot of people that are concerned because now you just had the Giants star wide receiver, Malik Neighbors, come out and kind of tease Matthew Stafford being traded on his Twitter. Now, I have touched on this over on my YouTube channel, but I want to touch on this again because it's basically noteworthy, right? It's newsworthy. The thing about this is that right now, Matthew Stafford, there are trade whispers going on. Make no mistake about it. It's going on at the Super Bowl. Okay. You have NewYorkPost.com posting this. Albert Breer said on the Dan Patrick Show, no one's talking about the Matthew Stafford thing. I don't understand it. I don't understand why nobody's talking about the idea that Stafford could be available. And if you're another team, you're probably calling the Rams. So it's interesting, because then Breer goes on to say, what if Matthew Stafford wants a market correction, says, what is it, 7 or 8 guys making over 50 million? I want 50 million. There's just a lot of stuff there where if I'm another team, I'm making that call, said Breer. So this is what it really comes down to, is that Matthew Stafford doesn't have any guaranteed money left on his deal. The Rams are going to have to figure that out before he can play football, obviously. But the question remains, how do they figure this out? How do they go about this? What is their plan? What are they going to do? Because I don't think it's as cut and dry as maybe I was hoping for. He's getting up there in age. I could very well see the Rams wanting him to potentially take a pay cut, maybe not a big one. But then you have all this news that's coming out about, like Breer just said, why wouldn't he want 50 million? Why wouldn't he want 55 million? Whatever. And it makes sense because you have Brock Purdy that's going to get paid. And it's like, man, I would say this. You'd sure like to get the Stafford deal done before Brock Purdy gets paid, because if he gets paid 55, and you could call Stafford every name in the book, but he has every right to feel a certain way. If he wants more money, he has every right to pursue that. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And when push comes to shove and you need a guy to come through, he's 5-2 in his 7 playoff games with the Rams. So this is a guy that has the resume. It's hard to say no to him, right? So it's going to be interesting because the Rams are expected to have around 50 million if they trade Cooper Kupp, and they're able to get most of that deal taken care of. But let's say they don't. They eat a lot of the money. You're talking about a little bit around 45, 44 million. What can you do with that? I think you could do quite a few things with that. I do. I think the Cooper Kupp trade has to happen. It makes sense. But I also will say this, if it gets to the point where it doesn't make sense and you're not going to be able to save any money and no one wants to trade for him, you might cut him. And if you cut him, maybe you re-sign him for cheap or something. I don't know. right? Or maybe you just keep him outright and you just do a restructure or something along those lines. But I really do believe Cooper Kupp's gone. I think he's played his last down with the Rams. He basically made that clear. But stranger things have certainly happened before, have they not? So that is something to keep an eye on. We'll find out. But I think right now, Cooper Kupp, assuming to be traded away, and Ian Rappaport said immediately, I think they really want to get this Stafford deal done. They know they got to get this thing done. The expectation is he wants to play in 2025, and that was reported as such. But is he going to play for the Rams? And Malik Neighbors coming out and having those tweets about teasing 9 and 10, Rams emoji and everything. Maybe it's not with the Rams. I tend to believe it will be with the Rams when it's all said and done, but my 95% belief in that went down to 70 with all the whispers and the news, all that. Malik Neighbors, we'll see. It's going to be really fascinating because make no mistake about it. You lose Cooper Kupp or you move on from Cooper Kupp. This is a transformative offseason, and transformative doesn't always mean better, but it's going to look different. And I think that's where the Rams have to decide where they draw that line. Is Stafford going to retire a Ram, or are they going to do a clean sweep and just move on from the core four entirely? Because Stafford's the last guy remaining once they get rid of Cooper Kupp. You had Donald, you retired. You had Ramsey, you traded him away for a third-round pick and a tight end. That's what you're looking at. So that's really interesting. Now, if, say, Stafford, a deal went through and he gets the deal done, whatever, what's the next steps? Obviously, I think they're really trying to trade Cooper Kupp at the moment. So I don't necessarily think it's not like they can't work on the Stafford deal while also working on, Cooper Kupp. So there's that. But I could absolutely see a scenario where, if Stafford left, they'd be going hard after Sam Darnold in free agency. They could also go after Kirk Cousins, but you could get him cheap if he ends up getting cut, although I don't know if they're going to cut him. They'd be on the hook for a lot of money. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. My gut tells me Stafford's back. I just feeling less confident than I was initially. And with Cooper Kupp, I think he's gone, but maybe you give him a 1 or 2% chance of coming back. Where does Cooper Kupp go? To me, I look at the Vikings, right? I look at just what he could do with Kevin O'Connell. I look at the Bengals, what he could do with Zach Taylor. These are familiarity factors, right? You go to a Liam Cohen in Jacksonville. I could see that. But if he wants to go to a contender, I mean, is there a better choice than the Kansas City Chiefs? They already wanted him. They tried to get him earlier in the year. Everybody reported on it. Kansas City, you can't agree to a trade before the Super Bowl, but after the Super Bowl, you could. Maybe that's why it's been so quiet. Would not be surprised if Cooper Kupp ends up in Kansas City. I would not at all be surprised. The Steelers were really interested in him. What does that mean for the Rams, though? If you're a Rams fan, do you really care so much about where he goes or more so what he brings in? And so I think that's fair. And as a Rams fan, you're probably wondering what he would bring in. Well, I'll tell you, I think it really depends on how much money the Rams choose to eat of his deal. If they eat enough money of his deal, they could get a 4th or 5th round pick back. But if they don't eat any money, then and they trade him as is, it's going to be pick swaps. At least I think so. So, also, common misconception. Cooper Kupp is still a very good receiver. So, he might have hit a little bit of a wall in terms of, being able to run laterally. But, I think when you look at him from the horizontal breaking route perspective, that's how he used to win. It used to be third and Kupp. He used to be able to create separation. Now he's winning over the top. Now he's been the vertical threat. And so to me, I think he'll continue to be that. But at some point, you have to imagine if he does stay healthy, he gets another lease and stays healthy, I mean, he could be a problem because he had an injury that kept him out 6 games this year, 5 games this year. It's worth mentioning, right? So that's the interesting thing with Kupp is that I would not rule out the possibility he goes to another team, stays healthy, and all of a sudden, voila, he is back to being a really good receiver. He's good, but what if he was really, really good, right? And I wouldn't rule that out. But it's worth also mentioning that you hit that 30 or the 29-year-old wall, and you're really starting to see that with wide receivers. Receivers are falling off more than they ever have. And, we talk so much about the running back wall, but we don't really talk about the wide receiver wall. And that's currently happening. Adams, Hopkins, Kupp, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen. So it does exist. If I'm looking at it, again, Stafford, I think he gets the deal done. Cooper Kupp, I think he's traded to Kansas City. So how about Nate Scheelhaase, right? Scheelhaase is the pass game specialist. He interviewed for the offensive coordinator job in Jacksonville, and he is going to stay, according to Ian Rappaport. And this is great because I'll tell you right now, not for the reason because Sean McVay is the head coach, but I actually think Nate Scheelhaase is going to end up being a head coach someday. I do. And I think this is a good example of what makes a head coach. It's not just turning down a job, but it's recognizing the position you're in. Pass game specialist, the pass game coordinator just went out the door to the Houston Texans to be the offensive coordinator. He basically turned down any chance of him being the offensive coordinator. I'm not saying he turned down straight up being the offensive coordinator, but there is a chance that he was offered that job and did turn it down. He's sticking with McVay. And for what it sounds like, it really does sound like he turned down Jacksonville and he was the opportunity there. 1 year in LA, Scheelhaase has impressed all across the league, according to Ian Rappaport. And while there's a lot to like in Jacksonville, he sticks with Sean McVay. This to me shows a lot in a potential head coach. You cannot be Iron Man. You can't do everything. You can't have everything. And so Scheelhaase realized, look, he could go and be the offensive coordinator, but he is stepping into a much different situation than he is with the Rams. He came from college, talk about Iowa State, comes to the Rams, and now Scheelhaase being with the Rams, having some guys leave, he has a chance to get promoted. And if Michael LaFleur and this Rams offense has a lot of success this year, don't be surprised if Michael LaFleur goes and gets promoted to at least be a play caller, offensive coordinator, right? And if that's the case, then Scheelhaase can naturally become that offensive coordinator. Scheelhaase turning this down shows a lot of maturity and shows the wherewithal that you need as a head. Sometimes you're outmatched. And while Scheelhaase could have probably done as good of a job as possible, he chose that he basically opted to stay with the Rams and felt this was the better scenario. This is the better situation. This is a smart move. I really think he deserves credit for this because it doesn't happen very often anymore. You see it drop of the hat. These guys are leaving. The Rams are losing guys left and right. Scheelhaase isn't going to be one of them. And that's cool because Sean McVay brought him over from the college ranks. So I love that. And then, of course, Australia. Okay, let's get into this because the Rams are going to be playing their football game in Australia, regular season football game in 2026. This is going to be the rotation. Rams had 9 home games this year. They'll have 8 next year. And then in 2026, they will have, in 2026, which would be next year, they would have a home game. So next year's the home game. This year's the road. Next year's the home games. 2026 is the home game. The extra home game is what I'm talking about. And the Rams are relinquishing their extra home game to play in Australia. Now, I would imagine the Rams having the deal to promote, in Australia. I would imagine that, it's part of that. But I'm very curious to see how this went down. Did the Rams want this? Did the league want this? Because I'll tell you right now, Australian Rams fans are going to be kids in candy stores over this. And then rightfully so. They should feel really good about it. But unfortunately for the other fans that don't plan on traveling, and not that they don't care, but when you have such a small amount of games. We're not talking 162 or 82. We're talking about 17 regular season games, and making the playoffs is like this close. I think playing in Australia is putting the Rams at a disadvantage, and I think losing one of their home games is putting them at a disadvantage. So those are my thoughts there. Hopefully the field conditions are good. That's another thing I always worry about. So, we'll see on that front. But Jack asks, let's see here. How soon do you think it will take for Stafford to sign with the Rams? I would probably say it's after the Super Bowl at this rate. Yeah, I think it'll be after Super Bowl if they do it. I think they do get it done, but stranger things have happened, right? Next up, if Kupp goes, hope AFC, I predict Texans. Yes, that's true with Nick Caley. Veteran presence there. You would have him with CJ Stroud and Nico Collins, and he'd be reunited with Robert Woods, I believe, because is Robert Woods under contract? Let me just check real quick, because I could absolutely see him wanting to link up with Robert Woods. I'm pretty sure Robert Woods is under contract. Nope, he's a free agent. Okay. Robert Woods is also a free agent. Maybe those two link up and they're like, all right, let's run one back and let's sign somewhere. If Kupp gets traded or if Kupp gets released. I don't necessarily think he's going to get released though. The Texans are interesting because of Caley, but that's what I will say there. Do you think the Rams pick up a wide receiver in free agency with the Kupp trade looming? I do. It might not be a superstar or anything like that. They might opt to trade. They might opt to draft. But they need bodies. I mean, for the sake of that, they need bodies. Tutu Atwell's a free agent. Tyler Johnson's a free agent. Demarcus Robinson's a free agent, right? Cooper Kupp is going to be traded. So you really only have Puka Nacua, and you have Puka Nacua, Jordan Whittington, and Xavier Smith. And then you have your guys that are on the practice squad, which are now the 90-man roster, futures deals, Drake Stoops. So you have guys like that, right? So, and of course, Quintez Cephas. I just feel like even if they don't go after the big fish, and today it didn't look great for anybody that wanted T. Higgins. Basically what's out there is that the Bengals are more likely to get T. Higgins than not. I don't know how you feel about it. I like Higgins a lot. I would definitely welcome him. I think I'm pretty sold on trading for Garrett Wilson. Now, keep in mind, a lot of buzz about him wanting to request a trade. So, where there's smoke, there's fire. So yeah, I mean, that's how I would have that. And then agree we lose a game at SoFi, send Kupp to Chargers, horns up from 916 group out of Sacramento. Yeah, it sucks to lose a game at SoFi to go overseas. Yeah, it helps grow the fan base, to be fair. And it helps out fans out there that haven't got a chance to see the Rams. But at the same time, yeah, it is going to sting. I like Kupp on the Chargers. I think that'd be a good fit. I do think he'll end up on the Chiefs, but yeah, I like him on the Chargers. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. It's going to be buckle up. I keep saying draft, free agency, whatever. It's going to be crazy. The Rams have cap space. The Rams have options. The Rams can move on from this guy and that guy. Even a Darion Kendrick. I like him a lot. I do. Way more than most people. But he's $3 million against the cap. And there is not really any dead money. I could absolutely see the Rams choosing to move on from Darion Kendrick, or you cut him and you bring him back on a cheaper deal. Could absolutely see it. But anyway, that is going to do it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, this is what's happening. Stafford is still waiting on a deal. There are some trade rumors out there. Albert Breer, basically is saying that he doesn't understand why more teams aren't calling about Stafford. Cooper Kupp trade. Ian Rappaport used the term immediately as far as when. So, that's something to keep in mind. Nate Scheelhaase is not going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's staying with the LA Rams in a very mature decision, I think. And the Rams will be playing in Australia next year. So that's everything there. Kupp with Harbaugh and their run game is a match made in heaven, plus Kupp mentoring Lad McConkey is a nice touch. Yeah, I like that. I like that for Kupp. I'd be rooting for him. I have obviously no ill will. No one should. The guy meant so much to the organization. It sucks that, it has to be this way. It is what it is, but it is a business. They say it all the time. I mean, I have mixed feelings about that term. I still feel for like Anthony Davis, everything that he went through with the trade for Doncic. I think that just in general, you can say everything's a business. You could also show empathy. You could also empathize with, guys like Jared Goff. And, I just think that end of the day, this league has a lot of turnover, obviously. But if this is it for Stafford, like if he's not a Ram this year, I'm going to be really upset because I think he's still a top 5 quarterback. And let's be honest here. You may have this inclination, we got to blow this thing up. Whatever, right? Cooper Kupp's gone. First thing you might think of is, okay, just move Stafford at this point. It's not good. But they were 14 yards away from easily playing in Sunday night's game. So that's my pushback from that, is that I don't think that they're far away at all. They outplayed every team in the Stafford era in the playoffs that they faced, and they lost only 2 of them. So they're 5-2. Stafford just played a great game, was playing well down the stretch. He always does in the playoffs. I think it's time to just invest in your offense. If Cooper Kupp didn't work out for the money, go out and make sure that you replace him with somebody that's explosive and is going to be cost effective, right? And the way the defense is playing. There's a lot of good things, but you got to take care of numero uno, and it's very simple who that is. It's number 9, Matthew Stafford. You got to take care of him. So that's going to do it for that. Real quick here, we need to sign Alec Jackson. I agree. I didn't think this initially. I do now. I think Alec is really key and critical to this team. And then you look at free agency and there's just not anybody there. Cam Robinson, some people are talking about replacing Alaric with. It's night and day who's better. It's not even close. It's Alaric Jackson. Cam Robinson gave up 21 pressures in the last 2 games of the year when they needed him the most. Cam Robinson is not the guy I'm going after. Ronnie Stanley's older. So you get Alaric around that 25-year-old range, 26, and he's the youngest of the bunch, and he's still really good. And you could argue he's the best offensive tackle in this free agency class. So yeah, I agree with you. They absolutely need to sign Alaric Jackson back. They need to sign Ahkello Witherspoon. They need to sign Bobby Brown. They need to sign Michael Hoyt. We'll see what they do ultimately, but that's going to do it for me. If you guys want to check out my content further, you can follow me on all social media at JK Bogan, including the Bleacher Report app, and check out my YouTube channel, Jake ELLENBOGEN. I will see you guys soon, and you guys take care. Later, folks.